Greetings, everyone. I think this may be like the least flattering light source and camera style. It's interesting. If I do just like normal video on my phone, it actually looks better than the Facebook Live version. So I thought that was kind of fascinating once I switched it over. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Of course, TGIF, it is Friday, and really excited to have you here. In chatting with Glenn recently, he wanted me to talk a little bit about my weight gain experiment, and that's actually what I'll be talking with you about here today. In fact, I brought my little visual cue to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see. So, for those of you who don't know, I am an extreme N of 1 biohacker. You know, you can call it lots of different things. But basically, I really work hard to kind of use myself as a guinea pig. Particularly, I'm well known for cholesterol, especially. But overall, what it comes down to is I like to do a lot of these experiments in order to further elucidate these different interventions that get applied when they do. And for the longest time, I would joke that I may just have to gain weight to find this out, or I may have to gain weight to find that out, never really meaning that. And not what I want to say maybe 4 months ago, I thought, you know what the heck, I'm gonna give it a shot. But I wanted to emphasize then, and I have every single time I brought this data up, that of all the experiments I'm doing, this is the one that I don't want people to be inspired by to consider doing themselves, unless you are like, you know, a multi-million-dollar actor, you know, like Batman star, Christian Bale. If you're Christian Bale and you're gonna make, you know, $10 million for your next picture from gaining a lot of weight, such as he did with American Hustle, then it probably makes a little more sense. But I'll have lots of reasons by the end of this presentation that you may not want to follow in my footsteps, as I kind of anticipate would be the case in doing it. So let's get started. This was for the Gaining Weight for Science. Okay, so I'm actually going to show a picture with me and Glenn from a little while ago. And when I say from a little while ago, I mean this was actually, I want to say, 2 weeks following the end of the weight gain phase of my weight gain experiment and going into the weight loss phase. So technically, while I was on my way down in weight, you may actually be able to see a difference. And a lot of times you can kind of see it in my neck, and I've got some other pictures to compare. These were all me before the ketogenic diet. So you can kind of see it in my face and in my neck without even seeing my gut, which I never found was, you know, too prominent. I didn't have to worry too much about that. But I thought I was just kind of gaining weight like everybody does when they're getting older, right? And lo and behold, I know lots of friends now who are on a ketogenic diet, and they're like I am, their weight as they left high school, as they were entering college, things like that. In fact, this was actually my my engagement photo. As you can see, I weighed quite a bit more. So, what was this amazing diet? Because I know you're all excited to find out. Hi, by the way, Travis, I see you there. This weight gain diet? Okay, well, sure enough, this was the timeline behind it. For about 4 weeks total, I ended up eating this diet, and the diet was fairly straightforward. I just added bread for the most part. You'd think that I added just tons and tons of sugar. And actually, I really tried to stick it out in the direction of starches. So while I did have, I think maybe a couple times I had pancakes, and maybe one time a little bit of a shake, but otherwise I actually tried to avoid sugars and aimed for starches, because that tends to be, you know, what, like healthy whole grains are the thing we often hear you don't have to worry about as much, and those of us in the keto world might have a different opinion. Well, you saw that there was kind of an uncontrolled phase. Then eventually I moved into a controlled phase of a controlled standard American diet, if you can believe that. And that's what, this is what it looks like there. So basically I ate this way for the, I want to say, last 5 days of the tail end of the standard American diet experiment. And as you can see, I was having a foot-long sub, I was having a pizza, and I was also having another foot-long sub at the end of the day. So I was I was eating roughly 4,217 calories, of which 356 grams were carbs. Now, I'll contend that it's my personal belief that you actually can be on a carb-centric diet if it is whole food, probably plant-based, because the part of the trick to that is you don't really have a fast speed of caloric entry of energy into your body. So as long as you're willing to eat all day, a lot of diets can work as long as that's not an excessive amount. But in the case of a standard American diet, of course, as you know, it's very high quantities of both carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, and fats, including especially refined fats. Of course, a lot of omega-6 oils, a lot of bad juju. So same thing with what I was eating here. Like in the case of the pizza, there's probably some omega-6 oils there that they're in excess of what I normally get. But all that said, I was pretty confident this diet was going to work in having me gain weight, because it was keeping me in a hyperinsulinemic state. Insulin, you know, if you can keep your insulin persistently high, you're on your way to weight gain, and particularly fat gain. So this was then followed by the weight not gain diet, which, as you can imagine, was a ketogenic diet. And now I flipped it. Now I have scrambled eggs and sausage, followed by hard-boiled eggs and cheese, and even a little snack with some almonds. But otherwise, it's just fairly straightforward. And you know what? I'm going to fit in a sixth revelation. I just have to say, right at the switch off, you saw how many calories I was having before, and you saw the kinds of food I was eating before. Right at the switch off, that fateful Monday morning where I switched over to keto and I took a whole bunch of tests, and a whole bunch of that data will be available later, I found it hard to have the second meal. So after that first meal of the scrambled eggs and sausage, this one here, I actually had a difficult time eating at 3 p.m. Bearing in mind that the time before that meal, in previous days, I was having a medium-sized pepperoni pizza. So you'd think I'd be ready to eat certainly a much smaller meal that was generally fatty, but already my appetite was switching almost instantly to just not needing to have the food as much. I was really amazed by that. I still am to this day. So here's my first revelation. And this won't be a big newsmaker. My motivation, mood, sleep, and energy levels all changed noticeably. Shocker. This I was fully anticipating. This I also warned my wife about as I was coming into this experiment. I said, you know what, you may see some differences in me and so forth. And I'm not going to oversell it and say it was super dramatic. It was noticeable enough that a lot of things, for example, entertainment habits. I like to do games, or even if I'm watching a show, I like to be doing something else at the same time I'm watching a show. That definitely changed to where I just felt like I could veg and watch shows all day long. Like it was very noticeable just how little motivation that I had for my entertainment time, or for that matter, that I wanted more entertainment time than I normally do. That I found to be pretty fascinating. Revelation number 2 is the weight gain was easy. The weight loss, not so much. This too is also not going to be a huge news flash, and it's also something that I warned my wife about in advance. By the way, a call out to my wife, most amazing woman ever, for putting up with my experiments. But truly, try to imagine this. Try to imagine me walking into the bedroom one night and going, honey, it would really help my research a lot if I could gain like 20 to 25 pounds of fat. So in that same conversation, I said, so you know, I'll probably be able to put it on pretty quickly. It'll probably take some time to take back off. As of this recording, as of weighing myself this morning, I am about 14 pounds down from the total 19 pounds I gained. So I still have 5 more pounds to lose. And this experiment completed at May 7th. So it's now, I want to say 3 months later. And I get this all the time where people are like, well, Dave, you're a thin, healthy guy. I'm sure, you know, you'll lose the weight in no time. I kind of anticipated that it wasn't going to be. By the way, hi, Travis, and hi, Mary. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to hear a hi from Houston. I'm looking forward to Low Carb Houston. That's going to be coming soon. Okay, so Revelation 3, and now I've got some fun graphics for you. Losing weight appears to affect LDL cholesterol a lot. Well, we hear this all the time. We hear that if you lose weight, you shouldn't pay too much attention to your lipid numbers. Well, this was obviously one of the things I'm personally very interested in. How much does losing weight truly affect your cholesterol numbers? And the cool thing is that I actually was able to control for exactly what I was eating, so that the only thing that we were watching change, for the most part, was my weight. So these next graphs will be of quite some interest to you. As you can see, this is a relative comparison of my weight, and the weight is the green dotted line, against my LDL cholesterol, which is the blue dotted line. This is a relative comparison. So this delta between these two lines, this is just 5 pounds. This is a drop from 204.2 to 199.5. That's crazy. Just that tiny bit of weight changed my LDL cholesterol by almost 100 milligrams per deciliter. As I was going down, my LDL was going up by a lot, by a whole lot. So without question, you really want to be mindful of this if you are not weight stable at the point that you get your cholesterol test done. If you're in the process of losing weight, I mean, this has been the most compelling data I've seen yet. I didn't think I would be the one to come across it. This is, by the way, what it looks like when you flip it. When you flip the axes of one of those, you can see just how tightly correlated it is. And for you geeks out here, that's the regression. I mean, this is crazy. That line just goes right through just all the dot. Anyway, I was very surprised by just how strong that correlation was. Okay, Revelation 4. Losing weight on keto means losing lean mass? Well, not exactly. So this was interesting. As you can see here, I took, by this timeline, I took a total of 5 DEXA scans. And these last 3 DEXA scans, sure enough, you can see right here, and I'm going to kind of zoom it in here for you. You can see that my fat mass had hardly changed, but my lean mass had dropped by almost 4 pounds. My lean mass dropped 4 pounds between the switch off at 5/7 and the DEXA scan I took on 5/18. That seems crazy, right? That's like, I lost so much muscle, 4 pounds of muscle in just 11 days. Here's the thing about that, though. If we go back in time, you know how I said I took 5 DEXA scans? There's technically 2 DEXA scans that were before that. And of those 2 DEXA scans, one I took right as I was ramping into the diet, and the second I took 3 days after that one. So after I had started downing a whole lot of the high carb, fat as well diet, and it looks like this. Shockingly, it's exactly the reverse. You see that I gained 1 pound of fat, but I gained 4.3 pounds of lean mass. 4.3 pounds of lean mass in 3 days. And guess what? It was mostly in my legs, which just happened to be the area where happens to be the one area of my body that I'm getting the most exercise with 2.5 miles of walking a day. So did I really pump up my legs by 4 pounds of muscle in 3 days that just happened to coincide with my eating a whole lot of this new diet? I don't think so. I think it's a gain of glycogen and water. And I think that, of course, this shows up on the DEXA scan as lean mass, but this is extremely relevant for those of you who are looking at these DEXA scans and believing that you're losing lean mass, because once you put it all together, it actually nets out. As we can see, basically my lean mass gained going on the standard American diet, and my lean mass loss ends up basically coming out to next to no change. My fat mass, however, I gained 5.5, and as of my last DEXA scan, I hadn't actually lost it all. I expect that if I do a new DEXA scan soon, which I will be, I'll probably actually see a difference. Okay, so Revelation 5, this is one that I've been talking about recently, and if you haven't heard it yet, you really should, which is quite simply, what does a standard American diet and weight gain do to the arteries? And make a little joke down here that you don't want to know. I'm only half joking, but I kind of do want you to know. So, You may or may not have heard of a carotid intima media thickness test, a CIMT. And what that is it's looking at the carotid arteries on the left and right side of your neck. And you can actually see an example of this. You can see it's like an ultrasound. The gal down there is sort of taking it from the guy's neck. I get that done about every 6 months. And what they're trying to measure is the intima and the media thickness of your carotid arteries on the left and right side. The common carotid arteries are very accessible, right? So this is what's been happening with each of those 6-month tests coming all the way up to the November of last year, November 2017. It was regressing on the left side, going from 560 roughly down to, I want to say, 532. And get this, it was even better on the right side. On the right side, it was almost 150 nanometers higher that it started out with, which was a much higher risk factor. And it too had been coming down precipitously with each 6-month change. I was dumbfounded by this. And the big kicker will be coming in a second, but this is what the chart looks like. And you can see for yourself, 558 on the left side down to 537. Right side 687 down to 536. They almost match at the bottom. And this was fantastic. It took me to a very low risk group. Well, what happened with this most recent test after I'd done the standard American diet and weight gain experiment? This is what happened. As you can see on the left, it's on the left carotid artery, it leaped up to a higher number it had ever been at before. And on the right side, same thing. And actually both of these, it had gone to the highest it had ever been. And it got there from the lowest it had ever been, from the lowest. So I was dumbfounded by those numbers, to say the least, because when I started this experiment, I did speculate that there was a decent chance that I'd see the carotid intima media thickness go up on both sides. I would have never guessed it would go up by that much. And just real quick, I'm going to show you a couple studies. This shows just what the difference was. So in the green was what it was in November 2017 of last year, and the red is what it was after the standard American diet experiment. As you can see, the risk factor categories changed by a lot. Here's another study as well, which shows an even wider gap. I was below the 20% risk, below the 20% risk factor there, and I just jumped way above into what is it, the 80th percent. Yeah, it's crazy. And here's one more, by the way. It shows the same. So without question, that was a measurable change. But here's the thing I really want to draw into, and the reason this data is so powerful is what we're looking at when we add on to this, when we add LDL-C and LDL-P, as in LDL cholesterol and LDL particle count. Remember, these four rows took place while I was mostly keto, right? And this last row was following this 4-week standard American diet experiment. Now, it's possible there could have been more accumulation before the 4-week standard American diet experiment, but I doubt it. Now, let's go ahead and add that data. Oh, dang. Did I not include that data? I guess I didn't. Okay. Well, anyway, the gist of it is, in these 4 rows, my LDL-C was about 200 milligrams per deciliter or higher on average. 200 or higher. That puts me well into the range of what's considered familiar hypercholesterolemia. And just about any doctor would say you're heading in the wrong direction. And understandably so. There's a lot of data that if you're looking only at LDL cholesterol, then those decisions can be, that assessment can be made. But I'll have more on that a little bit later. My LDL particle count, the LDL particle count was average of 2,000 or more. So in these 4 rows where you see my regression of my CIMT on both sides, let me really drive this point home. That was during periods of time where my LDL-C and my LDL-P were way, way, way into the 90th percentile of the population. Super, super, super high. But what's the main difference? I contend that the main difference is because I was ketogenic and because I maintained metabolic healthiness, I also had very low triglycerides and very high HDL cholesterol. And for those of you who follow my work, you know that I consider that to be very relevant to cardiovascular disease risk. That's why I'm seeking all studies possible. That's why I even have a bounty out there for people to give me anything that shows those people with low triglycerides and high HDL cholesterol have high cardiovascular risk with high LDL cholesterol. So the bad cholesterol being high, the LDL cholesterol being high, is supposed to be an independent risk factor. I should have seen my CIMTs getting thicker and thicker, in fact, substantially faster. I saw the opposite. I saw that they were regressing. They were getting thinner and thinner, even though I was in the 90th percentile of quantity for LDL-C and LDL-P. But again, I believe that's because what mattered was the low triglycerides and the high HDL. And the reason for this ultimately comes down to, I believe, it reflected a properly functioning lipid system. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of time to talk about it past this point as far as breaking that out, but I will have some videos on it here soon. But with that, this is the 5 biggest revelations from the weight gain experiment. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Before you leave, be sure to subscribe. The fine folks at DAP Live are really running a great show here, and I'm certainly a subscriber, so I hope you will be too. Everyone else, have a great weekend. We'll see you later.